continuing my year-end planning, trying to figure out how I want to adapt my business and personal finances in the coming year. Thought experiment: at what point are the taxes too high for me to keep working, in a sense that being self-employed versus an employee somewhere, I can throttle up and down to some extent how much I'm willing to work. It's easy enough to gracefully pass on a shoot opportunity just by saying, sorry, I'm booked. Don't necessarily have to be booked on another shoot, nor do I have to disclose the details. I could be booked in the sense that I've made alternate plans on that day with my family. Okay, here's the hypothetical numbers I'm looking at, which are very close to my reality. 2025 federal income tax brackets. I'm specifically interested in the 22% federal tax bracket. Now, that doesn't end up being my actual tax rate. It's going to be quite a bit higher, and I'll explain why if you stick with me for a minute or two here. But the bucket, I fill up every year, no problem, is this 12% bracket. So married filing jointly, the first $96,950 is taxed at 12% and 10%. But that's after the standard deduction, which I believe is $30,000 for 2025 MFJ. So that means my gross AGI on my tax return can be up to $126,950, and the maximum tax rate I get hit at the federal level is 12%. But let's say I have some work opportunity. It's going to be travel, exhausting, grueling, manual labor, and mentally taxing, but let's just call it's potential for me to make another 50 grand in the business, exchanging more time for money. How does that break down? So I got to pay self-employment tax via payroll to myself, and the FICA tax, so that's Medicare, Social Security, that I pay on the employer side. I am the employer and the employee, is 7.65%, so that's $35.96. And then in Texas, unemployment and the FUTA max out. I think it's like the first 7 grand or something gets taxed, and then after that, there's nothing additional. So that lowers the payroll opportunity to me as now the employee to $47,000. And then the employee side, there's FICA withholdings, also 7.65%. So that's $35.96 removed. And then I'm assuming all of this falls in the 22% tax bracket because, as I previously said, I've already filled up all the 12% income in my work year. Now I'm deciding whether or not I want to keep grinding harder to make more money, right? So it's all taxed at 22%. So then it ends up being $10,340. If I lived in one of the other states, like my past years in California, I'd have some percentage of state income tax to pay as well. But bottom line, what I wanted to look at as my net proceeds that hit my personal bank account off of $50,881 is only $33,065, which works out to an effective tax rate of 35%. I have a friend in California, does very similar to work to what I do, and their spouse works in a highly compensated profession that do really well, but they're just from the spouse's job, they're already in the 32% federal tax bracket, which puts them in the 10% roughly California state income tax bracket. So a friend of mine, for years, I never quite could wrap my head around it, but he was always he's like, look, whatever I'm billing for my rate today, labor only, he's like, I'm paying 48% of it to the government because we're already in the 32% tax bracket. Once you add in FICA and the state taxes to all of it, it's all income in the 32 and above, and it works out to a 48% tax rate. So a couple times we'd work on shoots where he's making it's like a $550 day rate labor only. He's like, I'm only keeping half of that. So is it worth it to go out there and work for 10 hours with a camera on your shoulder when your net pay on that is 50%? All right, working in reverse, we're going to do a hardware store run to get some M6 screws to mount this sheet of plywood on the back of the monitor, and then we're going to put a baby plate. I need to add a C-stand knuckle to the kit for this, so that's the first item that's missing. This Flanders we're not using. Got my audio kit, so we need to mic 2 doctors, lav mic, same time. I can do hardwired. I can also go electro wireless. I got the wireless transmitters in the audio bag. I got rechargeable AA's, AA charger. I got 3 Sankins that can go hardwired or wireless. I've got 4 cards for the camera. One's already in the camera. I've got card readers right here. I got a boom pole, shotgun, hypercardioid. The windscreen for that cardioid is right here. Time code lockets I don't need. We got to do a zoom feed. I've got the cables and the converter webcam box to do that. There's 4 bricks, 1, 2, 3, 4 dual battery plate quad charger. Key and fill will be F22s on Manfrotto stands. Third Manfrotto stand will be for the Flanders client monitor. The 4 stand is a floater, maybe for the boom pole. Short stand will be the 32-inch monitor. Once we get that assembled, we've got stingers, 1, 2, 3 stingers with cube taps. That should be workable for what I got to power. 25-foot HDMI. I need to find a spare. I think in my miscellaneous accessory case over there, there's another 25. So that's 2 things. I need a grip head. Can you get one of the out of the tool chest bottom drawer a grip head and put that with the monitor, the 32-inch monitor? Background lighting. I've got 2 F22s to do slashes or circles. Have an RGB light bar if I want to do a color wash instead. 3 travel stands for those. Newer panel as a scratch angular backlight. I'm not going to bring a C stand to arm out because it's going in the Tesla. I don't want to haul a C stand in my Tesla, so we'll use a kit stand for that. This is going to be either or, either 1 or 2 of these, or it's a color wash. Sandbag is for the 32-inch monitor. Camera's all configured. I think that's everything. Oh, a cart. Okay, grip head's done. I got to put my MacBook in the kit. That'll go in my carry-on roller with my personal luggage. We're gonna be hoteling for, I forget if it's 2 nights or 3. That almost ended badly. Back to the numbers. I'm sure those of you with S Corps have already thought, hey, you know, that additional income, you don't have to pay FICA tax on it. You could distribute the additional funds outside of payroll as an owner distribution. Yeah, that is true, except in my personal scenario, what I'm considering here is for the last, coming up on 15 years now, I've been slowly building passive income through real estate and interest income. I've got a good baseline that doesn't fill out that 12% bracket, but it's a good starting point. And then I have enough work already in the calendar for next year that I could just go direct with those companies on payroll or 1099 it. So I'm kind of looking at this at like, I know I could find another 50K in the 22% bracket, continuing to do what you've seen here on the vlog, van package type work, turnkey package rate type of gigs, but I got to maintain this S Corp. So if the first 50K is this 50K we're looking at in the 22% bracket, that first 50K, I'm going to have to distribute it to stay compliant as payroll. Or do I just decline to do that bigger work and go in the direction I've suggested in the past few vlog posts, where maybe I just go airline kit, and when I'm local, I work out of the Tesla, like this upcoming job. Less stress, less overhead. I can scale back my insurance coverage. I'm even considering getting rid of the portion of the policy that would cover the gear when I'm at home. So I'd only have the inland marine and the liability. That knocks off, I think, like a third of my insurance. And then on the tax rates, I'm sure those of you in other countries are like, man, a 35% tax rate, effective tax rate is super low. We pay way more. But you have some form of health care, I believe, in all of those cases. I spent just under $30,000 this year for health care, family of 3. That was premium plus out of pocket. I had 1 emergency room visit. But other than that, it was just basic health care. None of us have chronic diseases. There were no surgical procedures. And looking at next year, I think it's going to be more like $40,000. Still waiting to see what decisions they make when the government reopens on the ACA. But I'm not going to qualify for a subsidy. I'm over the 400% federal poverty line cliff, and I don't know if they're going to keep that Inflation Reduction Act provision that was put in place where you only got to pay, I think the silver plan is 8% of your gross income. I'm not super confident that's going to carry over next year. 30K, which on 130 grand of gross income, that's 25% of the pre-tax income just paying for basic health care.